is it bad for a DM to railroad the game? Before we answer this question, let's look into the word railroading and define what it actually means to us, because it's used too much on the internet to the point that it's starting to lose its original meaning. To me, it means when the DM has a specific, follows a specific path on the game or on the story of the game, regardless of what the player's choice or their demand or their decisions were. This becomes a situation where you basically railroad them into the outcomes or story points that you would like to have. And this can be seen as a bad thing. However, I think we need to look at it from a more generalistic point of view, because not every situation, not every game, not every table is exactly the same as the other one. So we need to consider what level of player agency exists versus the amount of experience that these players would be able to bring to the game. And this has some form of a correlation with each other, because if my players are not so experienced, and this has happened to me on tables, I usually try to not give so many guides early on and allow the players to come up with their own creative solutions. However, when the players are very new, they're not experts in the game. They do not know how all mechanics can work or how things can be. Sometimes they can be really creative, but sometimes they would hesitate. They do not know where to go. And this is where having a really high agency can really hinder your game, can really make it not be able to push and go forward. As a result, there is a correlation between them. So if there was a group where they had a relatively high experience, you could be certain that you could give them a high agency. However, if the players were not so much experienced, they were just beginners, they were just starting to learn the game, you would want to give them still agency, but to a lower extent, so that they can start to learn, start to gain the experience. And sometimes they would also just like to live, how would a classic game play out? How would being in the role of a classic game look like, so that they can later on diverge from those stereotypes, stereotypical story points. So you see, generally I would say it forms kind of a linear form where it starts to at the end become flat. So it's a linear experience between the agency and the amount of experience that your players can bring to the game. Now, last word to the DMs. Instead of thinking about railroading your games, try maybe focusing instead on guiding them by bringing kind of a story level guide or a more natural way to suggest certain solutions. You can make it a bit more smooth and still create some sort of an illusion for your players that they are still having, at least maintaining some level of agency in their game. And as they become more experienced, you can of course increase this level of agency and allow them to go and play further. This is of course my point of view. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.